So another variation, and just another way to make an exercise better. We see a lot of people attach the band high and they're pulling the band down and the elbow's floppy and the shoulder's going up and the upper trap is getting kicked in. So we see a lot of different variations, but you always want to be trying to make sure you're approximating the scapular plane, you're depressing the shoulder in the socket and compressing the shoulder distal to try and make sure you can isolate the subscap the best way and inhibit the pec. So now what we'll do is we'll go on a 45-degree angle, and you can find anywhere to attach this onto a fence at the game. So once again, we got another band here, and so he's going to push towards the center, but the whole time he's pulling towards his opposite hip. So he's pulling in on a 45-degree, and then he's pushing his arm into the floor or into the ground while he's trying to retract his shoulder in the socket. So he's pulling internally, so he's sucking the shoulder in the socket, he's in the scapular plane, and he's pushing his arm into the floor to turn off the pec. So it's a completely different. Now go ahead and show what you normally see. You'll see people lay on the ground. So they lay on the ground, they lay on their back. I've seen it all the time, and they'll be doing this right here. And so, yeah, you're kicking in muscle groups, but you're not isolating muscle groups. So the whole point of reciprocal inhibition is to try and isolate the subscapularis. So you want to suck it in the socket, depress the humeral head, push the distal end of the humerus into the ground to turn off the pec, and then what ends up happening is you pull towards the opposite hip, and you can do 5 to 10, 10 to 15 repetitions depending on how heavy your resistance is. And then what you've done is you've seated the humeral head in the socket. So I've had people attach it high and do it on their own, where they'll put their hand down here and they'll just push down into the ground. Just suck the shoulder down in the socket, retract the shoulder into the socket, and then do it this way with a little bit of posterior presence. I've had people push against, so people push down and push back. So if you're going to do it, I mean, that's why the best thing to do is have partner training, because you can have so much of a more specific muscle push or an isolated muscle contraction if someone knows how to contract or isolate different muscles by doing some sort of pressure that turns off some of the major groups and isolates it to the minor groups of the rotator cuff. So you'd be amazed how when you turn off one muscle group and you know somebody who knows how to do it, how much harder the exercise is and how much more specific it is. So you want it to be joint specific and contraction specific. It's very difficult to train the subscapularis eccentrically. We have one variation in the clinic where we do it on the back, but you have to change the band in different positions because you want to isolate different ranges of the muscle. So we'll attach a weight with the band, so they have to contract concentrically, and then let them contract eccentrically. So it's very difficult to isolate that very violent eccentric contraction in a clinical setting. That's why I've often said throwing's the best exercise if it's being done in a biomechanically more efficient way. So as quickly as I can get my athletes to throw or do drills in here that mimic the throwing motion, the more I do it. But for people who are on the field, if you're going to train the subscapularis, sitting there, make sure you're pushing forward, pushing out to the one where you're in a standing position with a little forward trunk lean to try and turn off the pec, seat the humeral head, and when you're on your back, scapular plane, inhibit the pec, retract the shoulder, and you'll get much more out of your exercises to prepare you for your throwing bout. So the key is getting your arm prepared, and then in a clinical setting or in a preparation setting where you're trying to train for the season, you want to be doing this even more in isolated ranges. So we'll change hook positions, we'll change attachment points, we'll change the angle. So that's one of the things that we're doing with the OAI is we're creating an entire exercise database so athletes can benefit from that. So Max Adet here from the OAI, just a little touch-up, follow-up with our subscap exercises.